Monday, November 27th. We survived the Thanksgiving weekend. I hope everybody had a wonderful time and got to connect with family and friends. We've got a nice sunny, clear day here in Florida. The temperatures have dropped a little bit. I always like to put my cardigans on this time of year. As you can tell from my little intro video this morning, I want to talk to you some about Christmas stockings today. They're one of my favorite ways to create a legacy. I have been doing stockings since my children were born, which is over 30 years ago now. And I believe if that series of pictures is accurate, I have just finished number 18. You start out by doing them for your immediate family, and then you do them for nieces and nephews, and then you do them for friends. And now I'm doing them for great nieces and great nephews, and continuing to find ways to provide that legacy, because certainly Christmas is one of the times when you pull out handmade objects and you think about the person who made them, and you think about the history that goes with that. So I've always loved stockings. Unfortunately, I am not very adept at anything that has anything to do with electricity. So I'm not very good at finishing the stockings. My wife for many years did the stocking finishes, and now I've got some other folks who are helping me with those as well. I'll talk a little bit about that. I want to talk a little bit about where you can get patterns and what kind of things are available. But I also would encourage you to branch out perhaps and think about designing Christmas stockings on your own, using some of the patterns and things that are available to us. I don't find modern designers doing quite as many Christmas stocking designs as I might like. I'll show you a couple that I have that I do sell here in the shop, but I think a lot of us tend to go back to older patterns and maybe combine some things and that sort of routine when we get into thinking about stockings. And I'm usually going to have one that I'm working on pretty much every year. So I'll start out by talking about the one that I've just finished, because it's not even become a stocking yet. It's still in its rawest version, having just been stitched and finished over the weekend. You can see this is a custom one that I worked on. And this is one where I combined some different elements. The top Christmas rose motif and the bottom area where you see the flowers in the pot all came from one design. And then this particular person wanted the little drummer boy on their stocking. So you can see that I found a separate design. This is one of those Precious Moments, Gloria and Pat designs from way back in the 80s. And then finally, this person fancies the Grinch. And so I found a nice small pattern of the Grinch. I didn't want to give the old Grinch too much time on this stocking, but you can see there, if I can get him up close enough where you can see him, there's a little bit of the Grinch. I don't know if any of you all follow me on any of the other social media platforms, but I usually have photos of just about all of this stuff on my Instagram and usually on my Facebook page that's associated with the shop also. So that's a good example of a stocking that you can do on your own. If you can't find a pattern that you like, but you really want to do something for someone that you love, think about combining elements. You can buy a standard stocking pattern of just about any type, or maybe you can trace over one that you've already got or something like that. But don't be limited. Don't feel like you're limited by the exact patterns that you might find in the shops. Another example that you'll see if you scroll back through the video at the beginning is that my son-in-law, Dan, was a big Star Wars fan. And I couldn't find any modern designers that had done anything with Christmas stockings that included Star Wars, but I could purchase online as a digital download a copy of a cross stitch of the Mandalorian with Baby Yoda sitting up on his head. So I did the top and the bottom motifs using more traditional stocking designs that I had found on patterns here in the shop. And then I plunked Mandalorian and Baby Yoda in the middle, and that was a tricky one. All the other stockings in our family flowed one direction, and the way the Mandalorian was facing, it was going to be difficult. So I had to, in my head as I was stitching, reverse that pattern so that it would come out correctly. And that's a warning to you also. If you've done a series of stockings and the toe always points in the same direction, make sure when you look for patterns that you do that, because they're not always designed that way. And you certainly want to be aware of it. Now, of course, most of my stockings have been given away, and they hang on mantles wherever, hopefully, loved ones have them today. The only one I really have at hand here in the shop is the one that I did for myself. And this is probably the only one that I've done on any kind of scale that does not have counted cross stitch, except a little bit at the top for the name. This is actually embroidered. This was a stamped embroidered stocking pattern that I got. I love Snoopy, and I always think it's worthwhile to include Snoopy whenever I can on things, and this was a kind of a whimsical one that I wanted for myself. Now, when I'm talking about the current one that I'm working on, the one with the little drummer boy on it, I'll show you just what you need in order to finish it. As I say, this is not my favorite thing. I tell people that I'm not very good with electricity. I'm better at handmade products. But the person that ordered this wanted a nice plush blue velvet inside. So I have a half a yard of this nice plush blue fabric. And then something kind of Christmassy and glitzy with swirls for the outside. So you're going to need, in addition to the fabric that the stocking is worked on, you're going to need something for the backing, and I did a half a yard just to be sure. And you're going to need a separate piece of fabric for the interior. I typically do just like a white muslin or an off-white muslin for the inside, but this particular person wanted something else. And then I like to include cording, so you just buy the cording and you cover it with the exterior fabric as you're working your pattern together. I won't go any further into the sewing of it. I know the principles and I know how it's done, but it's not my expertise. So I gladly hand it over to someone else. And I have a couple different sewists here in the shop who will finish products for us. So it's always a lot of fun to see people come in with something that's in its raw form and see it finished. The other thing I guess I would say about creating your own stockings is that there really are, of course, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of patterns that you can find. So let's say you like dachshunds, or you're doing this for a grandchild that has a pet dachshund. Dirty Annie's has this wonderful new pattern with this little dachshund. These have actually sold pretty well in the shop, and it's a wonderful pattern. Now, I could include that dog at the bottom of a stocking pattern without any problem at all, and then find some other motifs and an alphabet to do the name at the top. Another example of that might be this really popular Meridian Designs pattern that I've had for some time that has a Florida motif. It's a triptych, so it's 3 different things that you could put on a stocking, but somebody might like that little flamingo with the Santa hat as a motif for a stocking. So certainly be aware that you can do that sort of thing. If you scroll back through the photos at the beginning, you'll see that one of my favorite motifs that I've done many, many times is a series of stockings that Cross Stitch and Country Crafts used to have in their magazine. I think these were largely the 80s, maybe or into the early 90s. But I think altogether they had at least a dozen of these wonderful stocking patterns. And many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with them, probably did them yourself. You can still find these patterns around. Now, the older patterns are going to have a lot of detail, a lot of half and quarter stitches, a lot of back stitch. So if that's not your thing, you're going to probably want to look for some more modern designs. But the detail that you get with these, and you can't really tell it, the photo doesn't give it justice, but The detail that you can do with these is just amazing. If you go on my Instagram account, towards the end of last year, I was finishing one of these country craft stockings for a great nephew. And I did some progression of photographs with sections that were before backstitch and some sections that were after backstitch. These have generally a kind of a country motif, sort of an old-fashioned Christmas sort of an idea, but they really do have a wonderful variety of these. There is even a book that this designer put together with about 12 or 15 of these stockings altogether. It's well worth your looking for these old vintage ones if you like that kind of detail. I have several issues here in the shop and have sold the book with the combined ones a number of times. Now, modern designers do create some stockings. Rosewood Manor has one that I like a lot. I always love Rosewood Manor's designs anyway because they're so very intricate and they have such a nice feel to them. Not always old-fashioned, certainly all kinds of different ideas. Now, it's been my experience and the stuff that I've done with Rosewood Manor that you really want to do these on linen. You really want to take advantage of the smaller counts. And that's another thing to think about when you're designing your own, or even when you're taking a pattern that somebody else has used. You don't have to be limited to white and off-white with your fabrics, especially when you're thinking about linens. Now, I'll brag a little bit. I have all 54 of the beautiful colors that Weeks Dye Works does in their linen in the 32 count. So if you're thinking about it, you know, if you were going to do a stocking in 16 count anyway, if you do it over 2, you can use these beautiful colors in 32. So this is called Seafoam. And can't you imagine how much fun a Santa or a Christmas tree would be on that wonderful fabric? Of course, red is my favorite color. And so I love this watermelon that Weeks Dye Works does. You'll recognize these names because, of course, they're the same dye lots or the same dye colors as their threads. So there's some watermelon, and then, of course, this Liberty would be a wonderful bright red. Greens, silvers, there's all kinds of wonderful things, blue, dark blues, all kinds of wonderful ways you can dress up your stockings. And using the 32 count or any smaller count linen really does add a great deal of richness to what you're doing. So I picked out some others. These are more vintage patterns, but some of these designers are still around. Heart and Hand has some nice stocking patterns, especially when you like Santa. Bent Creek, another one that you'll recognize, has some cool patterns that you might enjoy. I get a lot of Erica Michaels stuff here in the shop, and I sell a lot of her patterns. And she has an older cross-stitch pattern. This was in 2001, but it's a nice Erica Michaels design. Annie B's Folk Art. If you like the folk and the kind of country approach, she's got some. And, you know, these are pretty simple to stitch. They're bold colors. This is kind of almost like a sampler done into a stocking. Some of the really nice old ones that probably you'd have to find in a shop like mine would be something like this one from Stitch World. You've got a country home, and you've got the quilts out on the rack drying. This is one I've always loved. It comes from Vermilion, and it's not available new anymore, but look at that wonderful angel. And that's another easy motif to find. You can look for angels, look at a Mirabilia angel perhaps to put on a stocking. Now we're getting back into the 80s pretty hardcore with some of these. This is Jan Hagara. Here's one by Charles Ross called A Victorian Christmas. I have many more than what I'm showing you here, but I just thought maybe it was a little fun to give you some inspiration. Cooler Design Studio, again, I don't know if I still see any of their stuff around, but these are the kind of things you can find. Look at Santa and Frosty the Snowman. And the last one I kind of pulled out to show you is one of these color charts. Of and that's a doll for Anne Marie. You got some really nice colors and designs there. Do your finisher a favor, and if your pattern doesn't give you an outline, stitch one with a single stitch so that they know how to do the sewing. I know they'll appreciate that. You can still sometimes find the Charles Craft ready-made stockings that just have a little band of cross-stitch fabric at the top. Those are hard to come by, but that might be a fun way to do a quick stocking if you like. And they don't always have to be this involved, but you certainly can incorporate all kinds of fun ideas. It may be too late for you to start a Christmas stocking this year, but it's never too late to start planning ahead and thinking about creating legacies for those you love. Mine, I hope, are enjoyed every year on mantles all around this country, certainly, and maybe some overseas. My youngest son is in Germany, and I suspect he'll be hanging his there. So think about that. The holidays is a real good time for you to decide to create a legacy. As always, I appreciate you coming and spending some time with me today. This is Flosstube number 8, so I'm moving along pretty well, and I've been doing one a week so far. As we head into the holiday season, maybe I'll have some more fun things for us to look at. So have a great week, and keep getting ready for Christmas. Take care. Bye-bye.